God's truth and grace. We need to seek and we need to do His godly will in all of our affairs. Well, so we have the first 3 points: promised power, obligation to obey, wrath of God against wickedness. That brings us to the 4th point, the E and the word power. Eager to evangelize. Paul says, I am so eager to preach the gospel, the good news, also to you who are in Rome. I have a friend, a PCA pastor friend, who used to be here and he and I have a mutual friend that lives up in Atlanta, Georgia. And his friend up in Atlanta called my friend here in Miami one day, and he said, "Hey," he said, I've got a brother. He's a little older than I am, and he's in the hospital at Baptist Hospital." He said he's had a massive heart attack. He said, "Is there any possibility you could go by and visit my brother?" His name's Brownie. He said, "Could you go by and visit Brownie in the hospital?" And my friend said, "Oh, absolutely." He said, "I go to Baptist all the time." So he went by to visit Brownie, and they became good buddies there pretty quickly. They struck up a conversation, and Brownie asked the pastor. He said, "Are you in the same church same denomination as my brother Bob's in?" And the pastor said, "Yes, I am." And Brownie said, "Well, I don't guess it really matters what your church is, or even what your religion is, so long as you're sincere. So long as you're sincere." Now, the pastor really didn't want to upset Brownie because he was in a pretty fragile condition. But the pastor felt compelled to say that a person can be sincerely wrong, that it does matter, that what really matters is having a personal and right relationship with God, and that there's only one way to have that personal and right relationship with God. Well, Brownie, laying there in his bed, he paused, and my pastor friend said he could see the wheels start spinning in his head, and he began to get agitated. And he said, "I have no assurance that I know God. I don't think I have a personal relationship with God." And the pastor was go, "Oh, dear Lord, don't let Brownie croak. What am I going to do? Call Bob and say, went by to see him, but he died." So the pastor was praying that Brownie wouldn't die physically before he was able to share the gospel with him. As he prayed for wisdom, the pastor asked Brownie if he would like to have confidence. Would he like to have assurance that he had a personal and right relationship with God? And Brownie said, "Well, of course." Well, the pastor shared the gospel of Jesus Christ with him, and after he outlined the whole deal, he said, "Does this make sense to you?" And Brownie said, "Of course." He said, "Sure." So the pastor said, "Well, do you want to receive Jesus Christ and the gift of eternal life right now?" Brownie said, "Absolutely. What do I have to do?" You have to pray. Give God thanks. And just say, "I do." So the pastor led Brownie in a word of prayer, and then Brownie prayed, and the pastor said it was amazing. Well, he said, as soon as I got through praying, as soon as Brownie asked Jesus to come in his life and close the prayer, he looks up and he goes, "We got to call Edgar." My friend said, "Edgar? Who's our Edgar? What's Edgar? What's that all about?" He said, "He's the other brother. Bob and I have another brother. His name's Edgar. He didn't know this, and he's going to die and go to hell." Are we eager for the Edgars in our life? It's easy. It's very easy for us to be concerned about those people, about them, those people that are over there, and for us to send missionaries over there to those people, to them. What we really need to do is think more about Him and less about them, so that we will share with those people who sit across the dining room table from us or the breakfast table with us, the people who are the Edgars in our lives, to pray that God would bring salvation. You see, Nancy had the right idea. She needed to pray and trust God for Will's salvation. But it wasn't up to her to save him. It was up to God. And when she turned it over to God, God brought forth at just the right time Craig Branson to come and to share the gospel, and Will did become a Christian. What an incredible thing. How eager are we to evangelize? Evangelize not only them, but because of him, to evangelize the Edgars in our lives. The most difficult mission field in the world is the family. Those people who, you see, my family knew what a jerk I was. I mean, they still do know what a jerk I can be. Well, that brings us to the final and fifth point. Whew, aren't y'all glad? The righteous response. In Romans chapter 1, verse 17, it says, the righteous shall live by faith. That's pretty simple. The righteous shall live by faith. But man, that's the most profound thing you'll hear today. If you don't hear anything else that is said today, listen to these simple words. The righteous shall live by faith. The righteous shall live by faith. It's not how fast I dance in the religious arena. It's not based on my performance. It's based on His performance, on the performance of Jesus Christ. He who knew no sin became sin on my behalf so that I might have eternal life. The righteous shall live by faith. But that faith brings us to make a correct and righteous response. When we have real faith, it means that we end up doing something, not for us, not for them, but for Him. Again, pardon me for being a historian, but on May 13th, 1940, the newly and barely, he barely squeaked by into the office, Prime Minister of Great Britain, the great Winston Churchill, addressed the Parliament of the United Kingdom. I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. 3 days earlier, Adolf Hitler had unleashed the fury of the Nazi war machine on the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Belgium. The Germans, under the Nazis, had created a seemingly unstoppable form of modern warfare known as blitzkrieg. It was the combining of the use of airfare warfare and tank warfare, the Panzer divisions, and it just basically overwhelmed the enemy. It was the first glimpse of shock and awe that was seen in the world. And that with this terrifying form of warfare, all of Western Europe had quickly collapsed under the terror of the Luftwaffe's air attacks, combined with the Panzer divisions. And the Nazis had assembled here an unstoppable, humanly speaking, unstoppable killing machine. Churchill called upon God, and he called upon the valor of the British people to stop this monstrous tyranny of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. The King of England called for a national day of prayer under Winston Churchill's leadership. You know, we just celebrated recently a national day of prayer here in our country. We do that every year. And this is where it originated. The National Day of Prayer originated here in 1940. Well, not only did they pray, but they did something else. Winston Churchill got on the radio and he begged the people of Great Britain. He said, whatever kind of boat or yacht or tugboat or canoe, whatever you have that you can go across the 15 miles of the English Channel between Dover, England, and Dunkirk, I want you to take your vessel. I want you to take that boat, and I want you to cross, and I want you to rescue the men that are caught on the banks or on the beach at Dunkirk. Well, a great armada of every kind of sea vessel imaginable was assembled, and for 3 days